Part-2, Chapter-12. The 24-hour kirtan had faced financial challenges since its inception. Without a regular means of income, Aindra had barely been able to pay the rent, but even later, when he was no longer charged for the brahmachari's quarters, he had to cover the cost of instruments, equipment, medicine, clothes, and the basics of daily maintenance. Anything beyond that was a luxury. When a devotee ran out of toothpaste, Aindra suggested salt. When one needed a toothbrush, he pointed to the twigs of a tree. Instead of soap, they could use soil from the Gurukul grounds. Friends sometimes helped, and Mukundadatta arranged for Aindra to get 1,000 rupees per month for his pujari service. Aindra didn't like accepting money for seva, though, and after a few months, he told Mukundadatta that he could manage. Instead, describing himself as a, quote, poor Indianized beggar, he sent out a chain letter to godbrothers requesting donations, but there wasn't any response. When the temple adopted a policy that each department had to be self-sufficient, Aindra didn't know what to do. Quote, how can the 24-hour kirtan department be self-sufficient, he asked. We don't make any money. We don't even collect donations. Why don't you record kirtan and sell the cassettes? Kadamba Kanana suggested. Quote, the holy name shouldn't be sold, Aindra replied, a point he made many times. Kirtan is meant to be done purely as yajna, for the satisfaction of Krishna, without expectation of anything in return. When a few members of the party asked about the kirtan at a nearby ashram that paid its kirtaniyas, Aindra said, it's nice to listen to if you don't mind being infested with millions upon millions of material desires. He asked, quote, by our performance of kirtan, are we endeavoring to generate an atmosphere that is conducive to the evolvement of prema or not? According to all the bhakti shastras, the substance of prema is based on the principle of selfless sacrifice. It doesn't matter what ashram or what varna one is in. All devotees need to be doing selfless sacrifice to advance in pure devotional service. Sacrifice done for the purpose of material results, and sacrifice with the pure intent of satisfying Krishna without any expectation of material gain, do not yield the same result. A gram of gold is worth more than a ton of fool's gold. Similarly, a little kirtan performed purely as selfless sacrifice for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu is worth thousands of mayak kirtans performed with the aim of gaining profit, adoration, and distinction. The practice would affect not just the musicians and kirtan, but the audience as well. Quote, where an attitude of selfless sacrifice is lacking, he pointed out, we can hardly expect to see constituents attuned to the desired selfless, pure devotional mood. When someone does kirtan for money, the one who does the kirtan, the one who hears the kirtan, and the one who pays for such so-called kirtan to be performed all become infected by material desires and get sinful reactions. There were also the considerations of how merit should be determined and with whom payment should begin and end. Quote, which kirtan artists will get paid and which won't, he asked. And what determines which one? We all know that kirtan is not just about the kirtan leader. So what about paying the mridanga players and the kartal players and the people clapping their hands? Why not pay the whole audience who are all singing, dancing, and participating in the kirtan? Should we be paying the kirtan artists on the basis of who is apparently prominent or most popular? Wouldn't it make more sense to offer the most money to those who are strictest in following pure devotional principles? We are all clear that it is generally appropriate for Brahmin beggars to receive donations so that they can maintain themselves, he acknowledged, and householders had to maintain their families. Quote, "It is also appropriate that we cover some transportation costs. But it is against the pure devotional principles of Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas to charge money for a kirtan program." It was not even most profitable, he said. Quote, "One of the problems with charging for kirtan is that it puts a limit on what people give. Someone may be ready to give more, but because you've put a price tag on your kirtan, they'll just give what you're demanding. We do not use the holy name of God for our sense gratification or material purposes. We chant the holy name without any personal ambition, simply to glorify and serve the holy name. If someone gives you money for doing kirtan, you should cry and think, 'I wanted Krishna Prema, but all I got was this lousy money.'" Quote, "But you're not selling the holy name," Kadamba Kanana countered about marketing tapes to support the kirtan department. "You're selling cassettes. Srila Prabhupada sold books about Krishna and described them as recorded kirtan, so why shouldn't you sell recordings of kirtan too?" Ayendra saw the point. He had to fund his department somehow, and he wanted to give devotees all over the world the opportunity to hear the Vrindavan kirtans, but he still favored donations over sales. Distributors might offer the cassettes at a market rate, but if someone approached Ayendra directly for a cassette, he would tell them the cost of production and say that any reciprocation beyond that would help fund the 24-hour kirtan party. Everything was recorded in his room. He wanted the kartals really soft, so he had them played in a wicker basket. He chanted both the lead and backup vocals and played the harmonium. A few brahmacharis were brought in to record another set of backup vocals near the end of the process. The next step was to make and package the cassettes, and for that he needed equipment. As Sachinandan recalled, quote, "A devotee came to me and said, 'A disciple of Srila Prabhupada has made it his mission to establish the 24-hour kirtan in the Krishna Balaram temple. Seeing his determination, it seems he will be successful against any odds. He needs to generate some financial foundation for the project, so he wants to record kirtan and make the cassettes available for sale. He asked if I could find someone to donate a 4-track recorder. Would you do it?" Quote, "I didn't know who Ayendra was, and at the time sending something to Vrindavan was like throwing a message in a bottle into the ocean, but for some reason I purchased the recorder and sent it." As soon as he received the equipment, Ayendra set to his task. He had worked in a multi-track recording studio as a musician in D.C. and had some experience with sound engineering. Recording in Vrindavan was a challenge, however. The power surged and cut off in seemingly random intervals, and as it turned out, the 4-track wasn't enough. Shortly thereafter, in Burijan Prabhu's room one day, he spotted a higher-end recorder and mic. "Where did you get this?" he asked. "It was donated to the VIHE, Burijan told him. "Can I borrow it?" Burijan hesitated, but it was off-season for the institute, so he loaned Ayendra the equipment for 4 days, and Ayendra hacked it into the 4-track that Sachinandan Swami had sent and resumed recording. So that he could return the equipment on time, Ayendra worked tirelessly, practically without sleep. His first attempt, produced in his room, was a recording of the Panchatattva mantra and an adaptation of a popular Bengali bhajan melody to the Mahamantra. but the tape didn't even come close to Aindra's standards, and he made only 6 copies, what he called, quote, my biggest flop. When he brought a copy to the temple gift shop, the manager listened for only a few minutes before agreeing. This is garbage, he said. I can't sell it. Undaunted, Aindra moved on to his next project, compiling 2 hours of his most popular kirtan melodies into a double cassette, Chintamani Nam. One of the recording's distinctive elements was the use of an esraj, a bowed string instrument. He also incorporated a swar mandal, an Indian autoharp, playing melody lines rather than its usual chords. The kartals rang out trills and rapid grace notes, and the mridanga held it all together and ushered the kirtans through sophisticated rhythmic changes. He included the high-pitched, drawn-out melodic sections, alaps, that characterized Bengali kirtan, but by limiting them to half a mantra and keeping the mantra going in the background while the lead vocal elaborated on the melody, he avoided the vocal showmanship that sometimes obscured the mantra itself. On one track, Gopinath led and Aindra played mridanga, a rare recording of him on the drum. When the master of the second set came back from Delhi, Aindra found that the duplicator had boosted the mid-range so much that although the vocals were clear, they were pitched too high. The recording was overcompressed and muddy, and the kirtans, unusual anyway with their long, slow sections and complex structures, faded in and out. Always the perfectionist, he was tempted to just trash it all and start over. But calmer heads prevailed, and the cassettes of Chintamani Nam were released in 1992 and circulated widely throughout ISKCON, attracting attention with its new techniques and, more importantly, attracting to Vrindavan devotees who wanted to join the 24-hour kirtan. For his next recording, Aindra was offered time in a Delhi studio, but he declined. I don't want to go to Delhi, he said. I want to sit down here in Vrindavan, chant Hare Krishna, and get 1,000 times more benefit sitting in Vrindavan and influencing the whole world just by sitting in Vrindavan. The main idea of the recording, which he entitled Vrindavan Mellows, from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's and then Srila Prabhupada's use of the late Middle English word mellow, ripe, sweet, juicy, to help translate the idea of rasa, the sweet taste of a living being's relationship with the Lord, was to give the world Vrindavan. But for that, he would need better equipment, which could not be obtained in India. Quote, I can't keep recording with rinky-dink stuff, he told Ramabhadra in a phone call to New York. I need a real system. And you want me to help you, right? Ramabhadra asked. We'll reimburse you, Aindra replied. Judd Barrett, a BTG party devotee and friend from New York, will guarantee the reimbursement. He's here with me right now. We just need you to pick it up from the shop in New York and bring it here to Vrindavan. What do you want me to buy? The Alesis ADAT multi-track digital recording system. What's that cost? $3,000 or $4,000. I've carried expensive things to India before, Ramabhadra said. I know what can happen. It could get stolen. It could get confiscated. I'll only do it if Judd Barrett guarantees to reimburse me, no matter if I can get it to Vrindavan or not. I want to make field recordings around Vrindavan to capture the sounds of the Dham, Aindra said. If you see some good equipment for that, maybe you can bring it. Ramabhadra arrived soon thereafter with a top-of-the-line field recorder, the Sony DC-D5M, which was eventually replaced by a donated Alexis system. With the addition of an equalizer, digital sound effect processor, and mixer, Aindra transformed his room into a multi-track digital recording studio. It was a demanding process. The power kept going out, and even when he used the battery and an inverter for backup, the power changeover was marked by a click in the recording. He was a perfectionist about the music, and even with the better equipment, the work to achieve the perfection of detail he desired was painstaking. The most tedious thing, he said, I ever did in my life. The main recording was done in the temple in front of the altars, both for the reverb produced by the size and arrangement of the room, and, more importantly, for the deities themselves, their spiritual potency. Each night, Aindra would mount the equipment onto a rack, and he and the crew would carry it down the 3 flights of stairs. Quote, we would lock the temple door from the inside and tell the chowkidar not to let anyone in, Devakinandan remembered. It was really difficult because Aindra Prabhu was very professional and wanted to make a good, clean recording. We had to play each song 30 or 40 times, so it would take a week or two, recording every night from 10 to 3:30. When Aindra recorded his singing and harmonium playing with the mridanga, for instance, every time the mridanga player faltered, or any time Aindra would misplay something on the harmonium, they would have to start over. He had Nitai sing one tune over and over after each, saying, that was good, but pointing out something that could be just a little bit better. By the time the crew was done with the track, they would be so tired and tired of it that they couldn't even listen to the recording. The next day, they would hear what had been completed the night before, and then lay down the kartal tracks along with the rest of the rhythm section, shakers and the bells. Sometimes they'd add clapping or a gong. Aindra played the string instruments, an Indian banjo and the swarmandal, and the background vocals were added last. In one kirtan, one can hear voices that sound like women's, beautifying and balancing the singing, but they came from Aindra and a few brahmacharis singing in falsetto, what he called gopi voices, and by speeding up the recording. The final version sounded like there was a big kirtan with a crowd singing, clapping, and calling out Hari Bol and Jai Radhe, but it was all accomplished with just 4 or 5 devotees. When the main structure of a kirtan had been captured on tape, Aindra did the engineering in his room, mixing in instrumental overdubs, backing vocals, and samples of sound from Breja. He wanted to flavor the recording with the essence of Vrindavan by blending ambient sounds of Breja into the music. He and his assistants would go out in the evening when animal sounds reached a crescendo and artificial noise was at a minimum, and record bird songs and other sounds of the forest. He recorded a Tungawala who carried people to Vrindavan in a horse cart, intoning, Vrindavan, 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 Vrindavan. The goal was to make Vrindavan come alive, to bring the listener into the holy dham. The full production of Vrindavan Mellows took 6 months. It opens with the sounds of Vrindavan's natural landscape, chirping crickets and cooing night birds, the cries of a peacock and screeching of an owl. Inside the cover, the title, handwritten and embellished by Aindra in sandalwood paste, arching over an oval painting of Krishna framed by a leaf plate, standing under a tree on the bank of the Yamuna, holding a flute to Radharani's mouth, is a message. May this cassette serve to remind you of Vrindavan, the perfect place to lead a spiritually progressive life. It is the home of Lord Krishna, as well as the home of his pure devotees who know the meaning of unalloyed devotion. In this dark age of quarrel, such rarely achieved devotion, self-realization, and God-realization, Krishna consciousness, are greatly facilitated by the natural yet superb method of singing these sweet names of the Lord congregationally. Always live in Vrindavan, at least mentally, and happily absorb your thoughts in the delightful pastimes of Krishna by constantly chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Devotees had never heard anything like it. Describing his amazement on hearing Aindra's recording for the first time, in Mexico City, Radha Krishnadas, the youngest member of the party when he joined in 2006, echoed responses from listeners around the world. Quote, I was like, who is this? How many? Where are they singing? In the temple? In the street? What is going on? All these peacocks and cows. Are they singing in a stable or something? The tape was an overnight sensation, and Aindra's reputation and following began to grow. Over the next 3 years, he produced Vrindavan Mellows 2 and 3, both with a similar sound and style. He and the Kirtan party members distributed the cassettes themselves, especially during Kartik, when Vrindavan was filled with visiting devotees, and the recordings were soon picked up by the movement's emerging mail-order businesses, such as Krishna Culture in the U.S. As distribution of the studio recordings, along with others of live kirtans, increased, Aindra's name reached out to the world beyond Vrindavan and spurred interest in the 24-hour kirtan program. Participation in the evening kirtan swelled, and as people began taping it with portable equipment, independent recordings spread worldwide. During one of Aindra's kirtans in 1994, someone clipped a small mic to the end of a bamboo pole and recorded for 2 hours. The kirtan, Aindra felt, had been really fired up, so he'd gotten the tapes and compiled them into a live album, processing the best portions through his ADAT multitrack and adding instrumentation, flutes, horns, and strings, and releasing it without cover art under the title Kirtan is Our Bhajan. In the spring of 1997, he released Prayers to the Dust of Braja, recorded digitally for greater fidelity, mostly in his room where he could more easily separate the tracks and had finer control over the sonic details. He overdubbed tracks, playing all the instruments except the mridanga and shanai himself, including flute, which he hadn't played since his days in D.C. One of the biggest production challenges was power outages, which were frequent and random and could ruin an hour's work in a second, as the machine would shut down without saving what had been done. Some of the sessions were recorded in an apartment in the nearby MVT complex, which had its own generator, though that required carrying and dragging over all the heavy equipment. Prayers was a natural sequel to the Vrindavan Mellows trilogy, continuing the themes of Vrindavan sounds, but with shorter compositions in intricate patterns, not always following his standard tempo progression, and exotic instrumentation with a dreamier and more ethereal sound. There was a noticeable improvement in the audio quality, the instruments, voices, and samples being more distinct than on the previous recordings. And on more than one occasion, Aindra expressed that it was his favorite, most successful studio recording. In 1999, AINDRA released Braja Bilas, a double CD, which, even with its beautiful instrumentation and long, free-form, almost dreamy sections, conveyed the vibrancy, the impact and excitement of his live festival kirtans. Still rooted in traditional kirtan, AINDRA was moving forward with a musically nuanced style of sit-down kirtan that was attracting listeners with backgrounds in contemporary Western music, a sound they could feel, with which they could connect. The recordings were at the forefront of a developing worldwide kirtan culture, a progressive, even revolutionary movement that was bringing back an enthusiasm, especially but not only among young devotees, for the kind of spiritually surcharged Nam Sankirtan that had marked the early days of ISKCON.